There's no doubt that preparation is the key to success and is the single most important part of making a successful pitch, because proper preparation prevents those presentation predicaments. You therefore need to dedicate as much time to preparation as possible. Good preparation will ensure that you've thought carefully about your messages, that those are the messages that your audience need to hear. And of course, proper preparation will also help boost your confidence as a presenter. When it comes to your preparation, I believe that there are 5 steps that you need to go through when preparing your pitch. And the first step is all about understanding what your objectives are. You've got to be very, very clear about what you're trying to achieve. In other words, what will success mean for you when you leave the room? And as Stephen Covey said in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you've got to begin with the end in mind. Yet, it's interesting. When I ask the businesses that I'm working with, what do you want to get out of this pitch? Often the feedback that I'll get are things like, well, I want them to invest £500,000 in me. And I'm saying, yeah, that's great, that's fine. You're definitely trying to get on that path. But realistically, they're not going to come up after your 3-minute or 5-minute pitch and hand you a big bag of money. So realistically, what would you like them to do? And when they start to think about it, they generally come up with, well, I really want a follow-up meeting where I can explain in more depth exactly what we do. Okay, that's great. Then tell them that and invite them to meet with you, because that's what you're looking for them to do. And it is taking you on the path towards your bigger objective. So think about what you actually want them to do and then work backwards to shape the content. As you prepare your pitch, I always say to people, keep asking yourself the following question. And that question is, how is saying this going to help to achieve the objective and the outcomes that I want? And if what you're planning to say isn't moving you towards that, then take it out. It's not relevant. It's not necessary. The second step is you need to know and understand the needs of your audience. So having established your objective, you're now in a position to start thinking about your audience. Who is your audience and what do they care about? To create a successful pitch, you need to tailor your pitch to meet their needs and their wants. It's really important that you focus on what they need to know and not telling them everything that you know. The best way to do this is to put yourself in their shoes and really think about what matters to them. What questions would they want you to answer when you're delivering your pitch? And there's no doubt that they're going to want to know a little bit about who you are. They're going to know a little bit about what you want to know, or they will want to know what you do. They also will want to know about the problem that your business is addressing, and they will definitely want to know what your solution is. And of course, the benefits that you can offer to them, because it really is all about them and what they need. They will also want to understand what you want to achieve as a result of your pitch. Is it that you want to arrange a follow-up meeting? Is it that you want them to list your product? Is it that you want them to fund your business? And you've got to be very, very clear in your ask to them. Now, the questions that I've just posed here, they're not in any fixed order, but they are the questions that you need to think about. Understanding their needs and their motivations is so important before you even begin to think about your message. And when we talk about managing your message, you really need to be able to answer the following 3 questions. Who am I talking to? Why am I talking to them? And for what desired outcome? Once you have answered all of those questions, you are then, and only then, ready to put pen to paper. We've always got to assume that our participants are interested. But even though they're interested, you're still going to have to capture their attention from the outset and appeal to their needs throughout your pitch. If they see that your content is relevant to them, they're going to be much more receptive to you. And that's why this is so important. The third step then is all about understanding the how and the where of your pitch. And it's interesting because in a socially distant world, a number of pitches have now moved online. And although our process for preparation and for creating our pitch messages is pretty much the same for both face-to-face and online, there are some subtle differences when pitching online that you need to be aware of. Firstly, you need to know what platform they are using, and you need to know how that platform works. And there are tons of tools that are currently available, and I'm sure most of you are already using them. We've got Microsoft 365, we've got Zoom that has become very, very popular. We've Slack, we've Skype for Business, we've the webinar tools, and many, many other channels. You also need to know the strength of your Wi-Fi. And if you're pitching from home, try to make sure that no one else is using the Wi-Fi during your pitch. And I guess the reasons for that are pretty obvious, because you don't want your call dropping out mid-pitch. Now, I know it won't be your fault and nobody's going to blame you, but it's still going to be pretty disruptive, distracting, and it's going to eat into the time that you've been given. And none of these are good ingredients for a successful pitch. I've put up there small talk still matters. And the awkwardness of virtual meetings often tempt us to jump straight into business. But you've got to fight that urge. Regardless of whether a meeting is in person or online, people are still people. They want to feel comfortable and familiar with who they're talking to. And that means making small talk at the beginning of the meeting to establish a baseline trust and familiarity. And here's the one that I dread, the background noises. So don't forget to use the mute button generously, especially if you happen to be in an area with background noise, be it noisy children or whiny pets. And don't be afraid to direct the rest of the participants to do the same. On the flip side, though, don't forget to unmute yourself when it's time to speak. No one wants to spend time lip reading. And then, of course, interruptions, the final point that I have that you really need to bear in mind when you're doing an online pitch. If you can, try to be in a room where you won't be interrupted. But of course, everyone does understand that children or others may walk in and out of a room because this is a new normal. And perhaps the most important tip that I can give you is to put up a do not disturb sign on your door. But take it a step further. If your children are old enough, explain to them, this do not disturb sign is up because mummy or daddy is going to be on a video call. And when the door is shut, that means you cannot come in. Okay. Tell your spouses, tell your partners, let everybody know. I have a video call at 3 o'clock, just so you know it's video. But even with the best laid plans, it can still go wrong. And I'm not sure how many of you remember Professor Robert Kelly, who, when he was explaining the South Korean politics live on the BBC, his two children decided to join him. Marion in the bright yellow jumper, who's just 4, and James 1. They both barged in. His family blooper went viral. If your pitch is going to be delivered face-to-face, it can also be really useful to arrange to see the venue before the actual event. Because if you can visualize the room while you're preparing your pitch, it does make it so much easier. However, even if you cannot visit in advance, you'll probably find it helpful to know the size of the room and the room layout. So in the example that I've shown here, this was an event that was run by Invest Northern Ireland in partnership with the water sector. And here the delegates were all going to be seated at round tables. and the presenter was going to be pitching from the stage. In the second example here, it was again another event that was organised in partnership with Invest. And this was a speed dating event. And here we can see that the people pitching were all seated at small tables. If the information is not readily available ahead of time, I would highly recommend that you get there a bit early, because this will give you time to familiarize yourself with the setup and maybe even to do a practice run to an empty room, which is what I always do. The fourth step then is to always find out the timing of your pitch. How long have you been given to deliver your pitch? Whatever time you're given, stick to it and don't overrun. If you've 3 minutes, you take 3 minutes. And a great way to work out how many words you're going to need when preparing your script is to think roughly, how many words can I say in 1 minute and still remain understandable? Now, the research would show that you can say around about 150 words per minute in a normal conversation and still be understood. But for your pitch, I feel you should slow it down a little bit and you should target around 120 to 130 words per minute. And if you go for that, that means that you'll have roughly 7 sentences to deliver your killer pitch. Now, if you're going to make a script, and again, I would highly recommend that you do, that means that you've got about 400 words and around 20 sentences for a 3-minute pitch. So if you can plan your script around that, you won't go too far wrong. It's also really important to practice delivering your script out loud, as practicing out loud will help reveal if there are any mistakes or missing content in your presentation or your pitch. It's also really important because the written word is different from the spoken word. I always do a dry run first with my colleague, and he's brilliant at helping me to revisit my content and my structure. He'll also challenge me on the content that I'm trying to deliver. It can be a painful process, but I know it's an invaluable process. Another thing that I do is I also record myself, and I generally do this on voice record on my iPhone, which means I'm able to listen to it back. But of course, if you want to be able to see your performance back, you can also video record yourself as well. And the reality is, I know when I listen to myself back, I'm probably my own worst critic, and I will pull my presentation apart. I don't like how I said that. I didn't come across very well. There was very little change in my pitch, my tone. I wasn't smiling. Oh, I didn't like my hand gestures. Oh my goodness, didn't know I blinked so often. So the more you practice and watch yourself, the more confident you'll be. And on average, the optimal ratio of preparation to performance is 1 hour of practice for every minute of presentation. But at the very least, get in at least 3 full runs before you step in front of your audience. And the 5th and final stage of my 5 steps is visual aids. I've deliberately left the visual aids as the last point because your visual aids should be the last thing that you think about. But certainly from my experience, what most people do when they're invited to make a pitch is they think, right, okay, let's start with my slide deck. And then they go through their slide library and they start pulling together all these very visual slides, but trust me, it just doesn't work. You've got to get your story straight first and then create your visuals to support your message, not the other way around. And if you do it this way, you will almost halve the amount of time you need for preparation. And when thinking about your slides, it's a really good rule to follow Guy Kawasski's 10, 20, 30 rule for PowerPoint. Now, Guy is an American marketing specialist, and he's the author of numerous books on presenting. And it's quite simple, really. He says that a pitch should have 10 slides, last no more than 20 minutes, and contain no font smaller than 30 points. So think about the slides that you currently have. What size of font are you using on those? When pitching online, which as I said is slightly different from the face-to-face, it's important to have more slides than you normally would. Being physically present in a room during your pitch definitely helps to keep your audience interested and focused. When you're not in the same room, you can compensate for this by increasing the number of slides in your deck and moving through them quickly.